What's going on, boxing fans? Julian Williams here at the distance. I got a response video to Joe Habeeb's "Is the Super Six Tournament a Failure?" And I'm just gonna kind of piggyback on what he said, and I'm just gonna give my own thoughts on it through video. Um, the tournament, when it was made, summer of 2009, summer of last year, everything looked good on paper because you had a middleweight, you had two former middleweights, one fighter who was a former lineal middleweight champion, and another middleweight champion who was undefeated. You had these two fighters, and then you had two super middleweight champions out of Europe. One fighter who had pretty much faced one of the most dominant super middleweight champions in history, and Mikkel Kessler, and Carl Froch, a fighter who had just won the super middleweight championship from John Pascal, which remains to be one of his best victories now that you think about it, because now Pascal's like the lineal light heavyweight champion. But he was just coming off of a great victory over Jermaine Taylor when he knocked him out, towards the end of that fight. And then you had two young up and coming super middleweight fighters who were Olympic medalists, bronze medalist Andre Durrell, gold medalist Andre Ward, who was like the last United States Olympic gold medalist. So everything on paper is looking good. How this tournament, the fact that there's a tournament in boxing, because there hadn't been a tournament since 2001 with Keith Holmes, William Joppy, Bernard Hopkins, and Felix Trinidad. There hadn't been a tournament since like 2001, and 8 years later we have another tournament to determine who's the best super middleweight, because it was a division with a lot of good up and coming talent, and fighters and it could bring along fights that a lot of fight fans want to see. And these fighters, they all had different styles, and they brought something different to the tournament. And so here's the first round. The first round seemed to have gone by very smooth. It seemed to have gone by very smooth, and Kessler, we all know, was having contract problems before the Super Six, and he had to kind of get ring rust off before he fought Andre Ward. So he fought Perdermo on September 12th of last year, and Ward fought in the same card, and they faced each other in November, but in last October, you had Durrell versus Froch, Abraham versus Taylor. And something that was very noticeable, that all of these fights are hometown fights. And before I thought personally, just like Joe Habeeb said, before you have these fights, I think that there should be stipulations made to when they could have hometown fights. Say maybe the first round, or every fighter gets at least one hometown fight, and then after that it's neutral venues. Something along those lines, I think should have been made. And there's just a lot of stuff that could have been drawn out much better than it possibly could have. And also, my personal opinion, I think that the first round went by smooth. The only problem with the first round was the Darrell Froch fight. It was a hometown fight. Froch got the decision in his hometown, but it was a close matchup, and it could have gone either way. So that was pretty much the only controversy in the first round of that tournament. So the second round comes. We have injuries, we have venue trouble, and the only fight that really went by smooth was Kessler Froch. It's the only fight that went by smooth. It was the only one that didn't even get postponed in that tournament, because Darrell Abraham got postponed, and then before it was supposed to be Ward versus Taylor. Jermaine Taylor drops out of the tournament. Alan Green replaces him, and Alan Green replaced him because Saki Obika had pulled out of their fight. So Alan Green automatically gets into the tournament now, that there's a spot open for him. Alan Green gets simply outclassed by Ward in the second round. Froch and Kessler, they have a pretty competitive bout, and Abraham Darrell ends in disqualification. So there's no rules as far as disqualification goes in the tournament, other than you don't get any points. And then we go to the third stage of the tournament, and now we're having all this trouble. Um, Now it's, the WBC approves a match with somebody who's a champion from another organization fighting their number one contender, who is Andre Durrell. Andre Ward's a WBA champion. Then Froch Kessler gets postponed. Froch Abraham gets postponed, which seems to be looks to be the most exciting fight in this tournament, most likely. Um, and also, we bring Glenn Johnson into the tournament because Kessler has an eye injury, which is forcing him to pull out. And this third stage of the tournament is just looking awful, and it's making the whole outlook of the tournament look bad because we're bringing in Glenn Johnson, a fighter who has not fought at 168 pounds since 2000, and now we're just giving Alan Green a fight um, when he was simply outclassed in the last matchup. And whoever wins this bout is pretty much doomed for danger against if they fight again. And then Froch Abraham got moved because of Froch protested, and now it's a WBC championship matchup. And now Goose and Tudor whoever is doing the tournament has to find an opponent for Andre Ward, and a lot of us boxing fans wonder who's it going to be. I think it could possibly be Labrado Andrade. I think it could possibly be him, or maybe Sakio Bika. I know it's not going to be Butte or Brinkley, or even Peter Manfredo. It's not going to be any of these guys. I mean, it's not going to be these three I just previously mentioned. But I think it could be out Sakio Bika and Labrado Andrade, possibly. I think it could be one of those guys. I mean, I've been bringing up his name every time somebody's been out of the tournament. Um, so, anyway, is this tournament a failure? To be quite honest, it looks like a failure. But it's more so, to me, it's more of a disappointment than a failure. Because, we had the first round go by pretty good. Second round, that's when everything started to controversy started to boil a little bit. And now the third round isn't looking too good. Nobody is, at least we're supposed to, these fights in the third round should have already happened by now. They should have already happened. And they're all pushed back to November and all condensed in that 1 month. So since these fights continuously get pushed back and we have issues with these fights, a lot of people are considering it a failure just because of this last round, or the stage 3. And we can't determine whether or not it's a failure until the next part of the tournament, if there's a next part of the tournament. We can't really consider it a failure yet, but right now we can consider it a disappointment, out more so than anything else. So I'm going to say it's a disappointment more so than a failure. And we won't know until the tournament is over and whether or not it is a failure. That's something that all of us can debate over when the tournament's over. Maybe 2-3 years from now, that's when we can all determine whether or not it was a failure. But at the same time, like Joe had said, we all can, or box promoters and networks can learn a lesson from the mistakes made in this tournament, so we could possibly have better tournaments in the future and have them set up much better. So anyway, guys, thanks for watching. That's the distance. Peace.